Hello, everyone. Hello, I'm certified natural health care practitioner Erin Thole, and today we are going to talk about food sensitivity testing. This was actually recommended as a topic for one of these videos to me by quite a few people. So I wanted to really dive into the nitty-gritty of food sensitivity testing today and what that all means, how it can be beneficial for you, your family members, things of that nature. So your immune system is really raveled up into your gut. So about 80% of your immune system is in your gut. So you can't really separate them. You can't address one without the other. So we want to make sure that our immune system is healthy and our gut is healthy. And the way to build a healthy immune system is to build that ecosystem of the gut and make sure that that is on point. We want to make sure that the villi, which is like the shade carpet looking guys in the small intestine that help to absorb our nutrients and kind of suck all those things that we need into the body, are happy and healthy and thriving. If that shade carpet gets worn down to look like Berber carpet or hardwood floor, we've got massive issues. We've got a lot of inflammation, something called leaky gut syndrome, which is where your immune system is just freaking out and reacting to anything and everything. There's typically a lot of yeast infections, SIBO, bacterial imbalances, parasites, like things like that are going on in the gut when someone has leaky gut syndrome. So we really want to make sure that ecosystem stays healthy. One of the foundational tests that I do to really assess someone's ecosystem is the food sensitivity panel. And I use a lab called Immunolabs. This is the only lab that I will ever use unless something massive changes and they completely throw science and reason out the window, which I don't foresee happening. A lot of people really want to have food sensitivity testing, and for good reason. It's really important. It's very foundational to know what works with your body specifically, because what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you, which is why I base all of my programs on that individualized approach. So the reason I use Immunolabs, food sensitivity testing is a super, super popular thing these days, and rightly so. Everyone wants to know what their food sensitivities are. A lot of labs around the country have really, picked up on this, and in the sense of good business, making money and things of that nature, which you can't fault them for, I guess, have started to capitalize on that and put out these food sensitivity panels that you can just simply order online. They're pretty cheap. But the problem is they're extremely inaccurate. And this is where food sensitivity testing tends to get a bad name, is because of that inaccuracy. The reason that these run-of-the-mill food sensitivity tests are so inaccurate is because they do something called batch testing, which is where they'll take 200 people plus samples and run them through a machine all at the same time. And what that does is it leads a very, very large margin of error, where my results are going to be on your panel, your results are going to be on mine, Joe Schmo down the street, his results are going to be on both of ours. There are things that are going to be on your panel that shouldn't be on your panel. There are going to be things that should be on your panel that are not on your panel. So it's a mess, basically. It's a waste of money, in my opinion. If you're not getting accurate results, who cares if the test was cheap, right? So food sensitivity testing is a huge thing if it's done correctly. It can be a monumental tool, and I see it turn people's health around just by knowing what's on that panel constantly. That's why it's a foundational test in my panel, in my programs. Immunolabs does not do batch testing. They test each individual sample as it comes into the lab. Your sample, your blood will never come in contact with another individual's sample. They guarantee that the results are accurate, which they are the only lab in the US that actually does that guarantees that their results are accurate. They are only one of 2 labs in the country that do not do batch testing. And of those 2, they are the one that guarantees that their results are accurate. That's huge. and you pay for that quality, which I think is valid because if you're going to do the test, you're going to have a blood draw or, just fluid taken from your body in general. You want to make sure that what you're getting is based on your body, is accurate information. So the other thing with food sensitivity testing is this panel is not going to only allow us to see the food sensitivities. It's also going to allow us to see two different components of the immune system when it comes to gluten or gliadin antibody levels and how your body responds to that gluten protein. So gluten is that protein that is found in grains in the wheat family. So wheat, barley, rye, spelt. It's also used as a bulking agent, a texturizer, a filler, just a cheap thing that's included in a lot of processed and packaged foods as a cheap texturizer in bulk. That's what it's used for a lot. Back in the day when you used to lick stamps to put them on your envelopes, that adhesive was gluten. Same thing on envelopes. So it's used in many, 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 many products. So this test will look at two different components of the immune system. So it's going to look at something called IgG. And IgG makes up for about 80% of your immune system. So this is where the vast majority of food issues and inflammation-driven issues from food are coming from. And the vast majority of health conditions stem from the gut and that ecosystem being out of balance. Whether you have digestive, like typical run-of-the-mill digestive symptoms like bloating, gas, indigestion, diarrhea, constipation, heartburn, any of those things, whether you have those symptoms or not, if you have an autoimmune condition, you have low energy, thyroid issues, depression, anxiety, OCD, like any of these other things going on, the vast majority of the time, they're stemming from that ecosystem of the gut. And the very fact that you have an autoimmune condition or you have depression or anxiety is your symptom of GI dysfunction, of the ecosystem being imbalanced. So we make more of those feel-good hormones in the gut than we do in the brain. Most of your hormones are made into their active form in the gut or in the liver or a combination of the two. So we can't just treat these other conditions without looking to the gut. We can only get so far before you hit that wall. So with the gluten panel, within this panel, sorry, we're going to look at that IgG component, which is 80% of the immune system. With the other 154 foods that are tested in this panel, we're looking at that IgG as well, which for a lot of people really boils down to those everyday symptoms, annoying things that we have going on where we're like, something just isn't right here. It's stemming from that IgG reaction. It's not necessarily an instantaneous reaction, although it can be. Sometimes it's an ongoing reaction, especially with like skin conditions, constant bloat, chronic fatigue, mood disorders, things like that, sleep issues, achiness, soreness, stiffness, or if you have a plethora of these issues, an inability to lose weight, things of that nature often stem from those IgG reactions. Now, when we look at the gluten panel, it's also going to look at IgA reactions, which is an intolerance. And so that is stemming specifically from the gut, and IgA accounts for about 10% of the immune system. The other 10% is IgE, which is allergic reaction, and that is like anaphylactic type of situations. So an allergy test food-wise in adults is typically a waste of time and money to look at that IgE. Every once in a while it's warranted, but not very often, because as an adult, you would know if you were having an anaphylactic reaction to something by now. So the most beneficial panel, in my professional opinion, is to do that IgG panel because, again, it's 80% of the immune system, and it's looking at those chronic symptoms, conditions, issues that are feeding into that imbalanced ecosystem and really driving those food sensitivities and other symptoms that we're having. So in that in that gluten aspect of the panel, we're looking at IgG, we're looking at IgA, which is gut specific, and also where celiac disease is diagnosed. So oftentimes celiac or gluten issues, wheat issues, things of that nature are missed for up to 10 years before someone gets a proper diagnosis, because in our traditional medical system, they're waiting for it to like tip the scale, either in IgA or in IgE. But so often I get people's panel back and their numbers for gluten in IgG are through the roof, and they're right on the border, right on the cusp for IgA. When you're diagnosed with celiac disease, your small intestine is basically destroyed. So why would we wait until we have total destruction and then we have to like climb tooth and nail out of that hole to address the issue, when we can address it and then change the ecosystem of the gut and grow that villi back, calm down the inflammation, do all the things that we need to do to create a happy, healthy gut, like years before that happens. We need to be proactive, not reactive. And, oh, let's just wait until you have celiac disease and then do something about it, then cut out gluten. No, that's not the answer, because by then you most definitely have severe leaky gut, and you're not just reacting to gluten. You're going to be reacting to all these other co-sensitivities to gluten, which are proteins that are just similar enough to gluten where in your body's freak out, inflamed state as a result of what's going on with the gut and the ecosystem, is starting to tag these other things as gluten. So those would be things like a lot of gluten-free grains like rice and corn, amaranth, barley, or I'm sorry, not barley. Barley is gluten-containing. Buckwheat is what I meant to say. So once you're tagging those things as gluten, you can only go so far on a gluten-free diet. You might be like, yeah, I feel a little bit better, but not, tremendously better. And it's because you're eating then all these gluten-free grains that your body is still in its confused state where it's up in arms and it's freaking out and it's just trying to protect you from the world. It's thinking that that's gluten, and so it's reacting as if that's gluten. So I get a lot of people who feel like they're spinning their wheels because they're like, I went gluten-free, I noticed a difference, but it's not substantial. I'm only, 40% better or 50% better or maybe 60% better or something like that, but there's still something going on. So this panel helps us to figure out what those other reactive foods are. So the panel is going to help us to obviously determine, like I said, what your food sensitivities are, but it also is going to help us to determine if you have leaky gut syndrome. And if you do, to what degree, what severity do you have leaky gut syndrome? It's also going to help us to know what macronutrients you do and do not break down properly. And our macronutrients are our carbs, our proteins, and our fats. So there'll always be a pattern on that panel when I get it back. And it'll be like, oh man, like you're not digesting, complex carbohydrates very well at all. So we need to do some enzyme therapy to really retrain the body and get the body to a place where you can digest those complex carbohydrates without having, massive fatigue or a lot of bloating or, these other issues as a result of that. So it's really helping us, this panel, from a lot of different angles. And yes, as your body gets more balanced and the inflammation levels come down, the villi grows back, your ecosystem's a lot happier and healthier, a lot of these food sensitivities are going to go away because the immune system doesn't feel a need to be freaking out about every single little thing anymore. So that's the other thing with food sensitivity testing, where a lot of people get some confusion, is like, but the panel's going to change. It's not accurate. It's like, yes, it is accurate if it's done accurately and not with a batch test, number one. Number two, your immune system is always going to change for the better or for the worse based on what you're putting into your body. So, health is not stagnant. You're not at this one point and you can never deviate from that. You can go backwards or you can go forwards. Your ecosystem, your gut changes every 24 hours for the better or for the worse. So if we figure out what your body's reacting to now, and we take those things out, we put some things in that are going to help to calm down the inflammation, put out the fire, help that villi grow back, get a happy, healthy ecosystem, then we can start adding these foods back in one by one, starting with the least likely thing that's going to be offensive to your system. If that goes well, then we add in something else, and so on and so forth. So the end game is not, oh man, I have leaky gut syndrome, so now I'm going to have leaky gut forever. I'm always going to have to avoid these 50 foods. Most extreme case scenario, I've seen panels where people have extreme leaky gut and they've had 40, 50 foods on their panel. A lot of people come back somewhere around that 20 to 30 range, which is still pretty severe leaky gut. We want to get below 10. That's our ideal goal, is getting below 10. So it's a process. We take out the things that we need to take out so that we can extinguish the fire, basically bring in the firefighters, and then we build and bring in the construction crew and rebuild everything. And then we can add a lot of these foods back in. The panel also helps us, really determine some of those things that there's no way on earth you ever would have figured it out with an elimination diet, like black pepper, which is extremely common to see on a panel. Lettuce, cucumber, apples, thyme, oregano, like all these weird things that you would never even think of to eliminate on an elimination diet. The other thing that I don't like about elimination diets is because it's so stressful to people, and it's like beating your head against a wall, because if you think about your body as a cup and your immune system as a cup, I'm either adding to that cup or I'm taking away from that cup. Sometimes people are like, sometimes when I eat dairy, I get bloated. Other times I eat dairy and it doesn't seem like anything happens. So an elimination diet, you'd be like, is this okay or is it not okay? Kind of thing. Sometimes it's a combination of food sensitivities that make that cup overflow. And that's when you get that reaction, that topical physical reaction that you feel, like the bloating, the sinus dripping, the congestion, the fatigue, the itching, the rash, whatever it is. But there's always, if there's an immune response, you can have an immune response immediately, or you could have one that's up to 72 hours later. So how do I know from an elimination diet standpoint that I'm reacting to something that I just ate or something that I ate 2-3 days ago? Or is it a combination of something I just ate with something that was also filling my cup 2 or 3 days ago? You don't. That's why the food sensitivity test is so important, is because it takes all that guesswork, all that headache, all that banging your head against the wall out. And we just know. Here it is, black and white, on paper, yes, no, for your foods for right now, until we can get that ecosystem balanced out. Then we can start to add these things back in. So I hope that this video helps to kind of clear up some issues around food sensitivity testing and why it's beneficial, why you want to go through a practitioner that knows what they're doing and is using a quality lab instead of just ordering one from, some place online where you're not going to be getting those quality results that we actually need and want and deserve. So if you want to set up a free consultation and talk about food sensitivity testing, please shoot me an email, thole.erin@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, poke around, learn more about me, request a free consultation there as well, which is erinthole.com. All of my contact information and all that good stuff are down here below this video. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was helpful for you, and have a fantastic day. Bye.